these two babies are all I ever need for anybody. So these are step 1 primers. This is our grayness reducer and our fresh brightener. So a very rich orange and a very pale pink. You can mix these to get any type of color correction you need for any type of blue or purple undertone. So for V, we're going to be doing a little bit of color correction near the jawline over here, a little bit over here, and a smallest bit under the eyes.
That was hateful and rude.
So our step 1 primers, I know everyone knows Hydro Booster, Pore Minimizer, Shine Control. We love them. They're great. There's also 5 color correcting colors that I feel like never get any love. And these are fantastic because they have silicones, but they are mostly a water base. So once it attaches to the skin and the moisture evaporates out, you don't have to worry about doing a layer powder before you go in with a foundation. It's not going to mix. Especially with somebody who has a little bit of drier skin type in the perimeter, I don't want to have to do a layer powder where I don't need it. So I just did some of the fresh brightener, starting with less of the grayness reducer until we can get the adequate kind of peachy tone we're looking for. So this one's going to be a little bit too deep. So we're going to add a little bit more of the pink.
What do you do to decide, what do you use to decide how much pink or how much orange?
So color correction, I want you to ignore someone's surface tone. You're really just thinking about the depth of the discoloration you're trying to neutralize. So you really have to think, is it like super, super deep that I need something richer, like more of that grayness reducer? Or is it kind of like small fry that you just need a little bit of that like light peachy bisque? This is like something you hear a lot about when you're thinking about like tattoo coverage. Like they could be any color under the sun. We're thinking about the ink that we're trying to cover. I want you to think about that the same way with your beauty applications. This is a more appropriate color for me. So I'm going to go in with our 144 brush. Deposit a little bit in, evenly distribute on a clean part of the palette so I'm not overloading in any particular area of the brush. We turn towards the mirrors. And then gently just start pushing it over exactly where I need it. So for anyone who's not super familiar with color correction, this isn't to be treated like your concealer. This isn't that you kind of lay it down and then you blend it out so the edges are totally gone. You keep your color correction exactly where you need it. You start blending it into the areas that don't have that level of discoloration. You're now fighting that color with your complexion products. So you can see there's no buffing. There's really just me pressing it exactly where I'm seeing that little bit of a blue cast. Now you don't want to now see just that peachy color because if you turn this way, now it's just her skin tone. Turn a little bit towards me. Now I know color correction can be a little bit daunting, but it's honestly, I kind of think of it as like a little bit of like a challenge always to like refer back to my color theory to make sure that like, I know what I'm doing.
Color theory is so much of the cosmetic application in its entirety.
Absolutely, and honestly, for areas like this, commonly you'll see a little bit more of that like blue to purple cast. The under eye can get a little tricky because there are 2 types of discoloration that exist on the under eye. One is going to be subdermal, so it's going to be under the skin. That's where you'll typically have a little bit more of that blue or purple undertone that you're trying to negate. Sometimes it's dermal. It's the actual skin that's discolored that can kind of read a little bit more yellow or even green on more rich complexions. So you have to adjust your color correction accordingly. Now you will probably see me use this brush about 12 more times. So there are 2 brushes in our collection that I have about 12 in my kit, 144 being one of them and 156 being the other. What I do love about our brushes is I've actually had a 108 foundation brush in my kit since I started makeup 37 years ago. Shut up. So all of our brushes are synthetic. So it makes it a lot easier for me able to use it for creams, powders, liquids. It's also not going to run that risk of like a porous material like natural hair that can hold on to liquids or creams that it doesn't really fully wash out because they're porous. Look up for me. Now I started with the jawline and above the lip because I'm giving that a little bit more time to dry down because I'll be doing the foundation first. And then I'm doing the under eye now and giving this a little bit time to dry down because I'm not going to be doing concealer for a little bit. I always try to like keep in mind, like I'm trying to get this done as quick as I can for my client, but also, so I'm really being very intentional with every step I'm taking. I go in with a full game plan. Your client will thank you. Honestly, your anxiety will thank you if you don't go in and just try to do it like on a whim. And like for something like this, you may not get booked for like a trial, but when you're having that consultation with your client, just while they're talking, start analyzing their face, seeing where you're gonna have to do what, where you're gonna have to color correct, where it's gonna need a little bit more kind of troubleshooting to address later on. Give yourself a little bit of game plan before you even jump into anything. It's funny, if you ever look at any of the photos of our founder, Denny Sands, you'll always see she has like 2 brushes in her hand and then like a water tissue in the other hand. Because since all of our brush is synthetic, it's not holding on anything. So if we need to use the same brush for a different color, different product, we just wipe it off in between. And raise your hand if you always forget a spatula in your kit. Our brushes have a beveled end just for that reason, because Jesus knows I lose them like they're water. Okay. Go ahead and rub all this color correction. Now I did say, well, I'm letting this soak in. I did say that our color correctors come in 5 colors. So another kind of like 2 unsung heroes that I feel like nobody ever grabs. And I gave them to my entire team like last year, and they've become everyone's favorite thing. V, would you like to tell them a story about what you did this weekend with your client who was allergic to all foundations and concealers?
Yeah, I was actually I would love to tell you guys this story because it was really nuts. So I was working on a shoot recently, and I had to do the headshots for one immersive theater that is coming up in the next couple weeks. Yeah. And so it was like boom, 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 10 different people like back to back within 2.5 hours. The very last person that I had was a gender nonconforming person, and they had said to me that due to their autism, that they have a lot of sensory issues. So in relation to cosmetic application, they could not stand or handle the feeling of foundation, the feeling of concealer, the feeling of anything. Now, you're getting paid for a job on this type of thing, right? I was getting a paycheck from this. It's ridiculous to me to walk into the space and not have my thinking cap on. And I thought about Antonio actually, because he has championed these products for a very long time. I was able to make a skin tint out of the color correctors to match their foundation shade. And because it's such a thin formula, and primarily water, it's soaked into the skin without feeling like anything was on the skin. It's really important to think about and consider that what you have in your kit can make something work if you understand the fundamentals behind it, if you understand a little bit about formulation and also about the actual product itself. Just like you have problems and figuring it out.
So another 2 that I really use all the time are our tone up perfector, which is going to be a very like light blue. And then our yellowness neutralizer would be like a lavender. So I just want to grab one of our HD skins. This is 4N62. She's rich. She's got a lot of yellow, a lot of orange. I can take this. I added some lavender to this one. And I added some of the tone reflector blue to this one. I've now just adjusted the undertones in it, and I've just made several foundations out of that one color. I'm 33. My lower back hurts all the time. I want the least amount of products in my kit that I need. So I just carry the full size of these in my kits, and I only carry like 12 colors in my kit, and I adjust how I need to. And that's on color theory.
And that's on professionalism.
No, that's on being lazy, not wanting to get a Hulk-in bag because I don't want to roll it around.
And that's on laziness.
All right, now that these have fully soaked in, turn this way, we can see there's no shine, there's nothing illuminating to these color correctors, but we've done all the neutralization we need. This one's still drying down. We'll tap it out before we apply anything else. So now we're gonna go in with a little bit of HD skin. Are you 4 or 6? You're 6.
There you go. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember.
Now our HD skin, who here has been a long time fan of Makeup Forever? Who here remembers Ultra HD? Who here was mad at us when we got rid of Ultra HD? All those same hands stayed up. So I was a Ride or Die Ultra HD as well. That was the first foundation I ever bought. Like, no, first liquid foundation. My first powder foundation was actually the Halo powder from Smashbox.
Whoa.
We're talking 20, like,
Okay.
12, 13?
Smash box.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have grown to love HD Skin. It is a medium to full coverage, waterproof product. Now, what I love about this is I loved Ultra HD. There were a couple of problems with it though. So the undertones, as cameras got better, were no longer reading properly. Some of ours were a blue-red, and that blue would get pulled out. People would look really, really like pink on camera. Same thing for some of our Ys. They were a green-yellow, and that green would get pulled out, and they would look like an Oompa Loompa. So when we think about HD quality, what are we talking about in complexion in relation to cosmetics? High definition, yeah. So HD is going to mean high definition. Can anyone think about like what parameters of a product would make it HD? Not reflects, the other one. Refracts light, yes. You've been to my class before. So that's one major point of HD quality. There's a second one. So how the pigments in your foundation work in relation to media. So we're talking about cameras. It is all the colors in media are made of 3 colors, RGB, red, green, and blue. So the pigments in your foundation need to correlate to the way that they're reading on camera properly. That's one quality of HD, and another one's refraction of light, the way that your skin naturally interacts with light. So when something reflects, it bounces straight back and forth. If light hits your natural skin, it doesn't bounce straight back, it actually hits and then separates. HD foundations are meant to do the same thing because they're meant to mimic actual skin. So now we're gonna go with our HD Skin 1N06. And one of the biggest things that I love about this foundation is that we made it a smoothing foundation. It is silicone-based foundation, but it is a fractured silicone. So what that's gonna do is it's going to go ahead and blanket the skin. And just like we know silicones, they're like smoothing primers. It's going to smooth out the skin, it's gonna blanket the skin. But with a fractured silicone, because they're so small, it moves with the natural animations of the skin. So it dries down. Let's say you have a mature client. It's not going to get into any lines because where it dries down is where it stays. Someone can smile, relax. It's not going to get into the smile lines. It's not going to get into the lines next to their eyes. They start like squinting throughout the day. Where it dries down is where it stays. So I'm just going to go in with our 152 brush. I'm going to start stippling in the foundation. I'm going to work in thin layers. Even though this is a medium to full coverage, it's not full off the bat, so I don't need to worry about caking it on. And something else I really love about this is the foundation I have in my kit, the 12 colors, is that they are incredibly malleable. So if I wanted to make this more into a skin tint, I can take this with a hydrating primer, mix it in. It's not going to compromise the integrity of the foundation. Same thing if maybe I still want to keep that like full waterproof kind of formulation aspect, but I need it to be a thinner formula. I can mix an airbrush thinner, and it's going to thin out the pigment, and it's going to still allow it to have that long wear waterproof factor to it. It just won't build up to a full coverage anymore. And if you want it to turn into like a super glowy foundation, you're like on a beach shoot, you can absolutely mix in an oil. It's not going to break it down. Introducing an oil, though, I will say, does take away that waterproof factor. It's going to make it more glowy. It's going to make it not waterproof anymore because oil breaks down makeup. And I'll actually be showcasing how to mix it with airbrush thinner with a couple of our products later on. You were going to say something, V?
I was actually, I was going to say how good of a point that is to just keep in mind that the things that you are adding into your foundation, how they do compromise the actual formulation of it. I think that the statement that you made, or the comment rather, about adding oil to it can make it a more glowy type of foundation. Thank you. It will disrupt that aspect of the formulation. I think that's just a really good point and something really important to remember.
Yeah, and this is something that I really love to do is I will typically not mix in oils with a lot of things. I will use airbrush thinner. And our brush cleaner is actually isododecane, which is what airbrush thinner is. So oil will separate pigments, make it thinner, but it's going to make it a radiant finish. Isododecane is going to thin out the product, but it's going to retain its natural kind of dry down factor and its natural finish because of the volatility of isododecane.
I live for isododecane. I really do live for it. It's fab.
All right, and don't forget the ears. Not only will they show up in camera, but when we're thinking events, there's typically a little bit of liquor involved. Your ears are super, super thin, and the liquor thins your blood, so they will turn red very, very quickly.
That has never happened to me before.
You're a liar.
I'm just a different kind of girl. Sorry to say. Sorry to say. It's happening.
All right, we have you look up. I'm just going to smooth out the color correction. And because the HD skin can build to full coverage, you can absolutely go in with your palette here. But if I'm not doing an intense highlight, I'm gonna just take some like full potent HD skin, and I'm gonna use that as my concealer. Because when I'm doing like, you know, a highlight later and the contour later, I don't wanna have to add in like a third, fourth, fifth product. So we're just gonna go ahead and address the discoloration and even it out with the rest of the complexion and allow our highlight to do its own job. Again, work smarter, not harder. Carry less things in your kit.
From TikTok asked, how do you feel about underpainting for red carpet?
Underpainting is a beautiful concept for red carpet, so long as your client's skin can hold on to that much makeup. I am going to be doing something like underpainting, so when we get into the contouring and the highlight, I'm going to be unifying a palette, which is kind of going to be a different concept that's going to have a very similar effect. All right, that brush.
Somebody asked, what
There will always be creasing under the eyes. You will never completely mitigate that, but I think one of the best things you can do is work in thin layers to get the necessary coverage you need for the under eye. Allow it to naturally air dry. Once that happens, buff out any lines and then immediately set it. Do not go in and set it while it's still soaking wet. Think about cement. You get something hard when you mix water with a cement powder. This is your water. If you throw powder right onto it, it's going to get rock hard, it's going to get crumbly, it's going to take out all the moisture, allow it to naturally air dry. Like if I'm going to set my client's under eye at all, I do it like in 30 minutes. All right, gorgeous. We have a nice flat surface. I'm going to take just whatever HD skin I've left on the palette, smallest bit. Let me close your eyes. And I'm just going to add a little bit onto the lid. Not enough to do like a full cover of the lid because I still want to keep a little bit of that natural shadow from what I'm going to build up. But you don't always need like something that's labeled an eyeshadow primer. I very much will use anything that is a waterproof complexion product in my kit as a primer. Just keep in mind, you want, like, I wouldn't use like a super like hydrating like serum concealer as an eyeshadow primer because your eyelids, whether you are dry, oily, combo, your eyelids produce a ton of oil. You have the most sebaceous glands in the center of your face. So if you just have a waterproof complexion product, it's going to dry down and mitigate that. You don't need a designated eyeshadow primer per se. All right, gorgeous. We're going to leave it there. Now, does anyone here oil paint or do any type of like artistic like mural painting? Yeah? All right, so this is I don't want to say old, but it is an artistic concept when it's called unifying a palette. So what they do a lot for mural paint and stuff like that is they'll grab all the colors they're going to use for their work, and then they'll take one color and introduce it into all of the other colors. So now everything has a common base that can blend together. So I'm going to take that same HD skin, 1N06, 1, 2, and now I'm going to go in with our HD Skin Face Essentials palette. So I'm sure many of you or most of you have some of these palettes, but I'm sure there's a lot of colors in here that you do not touch. Probably the lightest of the light, the deepest of the deep. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lightest neutral in the Face Essentials 1 palette, and I'm going to mix it into the foundation. because now I have 1906 all over. I'm now mixing this most fair shade that realistically my client may not always live in that realm, so I almost never get to use it. Introduce it into the foundation shade and create a custom highlight that I know is going to blend in perfectly because I know a common base. And I'll do the same thing with the sculpting shade. Spatula.
Catherine said that she saw that palette in the Bella Hadid TikTok and always wondered how to use that palette.
So these palettes are honestly so easy and I love it. So these are an HD Skin formula. So it's that same fractured silicone. It's gonna be the same natural matte finish. It's gonna be waterproof, long wear, all that good stuff. They are gonna be medium. It can build almost to a full, but because there's so many colors in there, it's really meant for mixing. So you can use them as your highlighters or your concealers, or you want a brightening concealer. You can use them as your foundation shade if you can get your right mix down. You can use them as bronzing creams. You can use some of the blushes and the richer ones can be used as color correctors themselves. These are tested for eyes, lips, face. You can use them as lipsticks. You can use them as some of the deeper ones. I'll always use as like a smoky eye base because I don't feel like building it out in a pencil for 3 minutes. So we now have custom highlight. Now we're gonna do a custom sculpting shade. I'm gonna go right back into the same palette. I'm gonna take this deepest cool tone. And mix it right in. Now when you're mixing, you'll probably need usually a 1-to-1 ratio for your highlight shade. You'll need probably a 2-to-1 ratio for your foundation to sculpting because deeper colors carry more pigment. So you don't want to do a 1-to-1 or else it's going to deepen it a lot. Now, when everyone's doing highlight and contour, who does highlight first? Okay, who does contour first? Who paints it all on at once and blends it out? You're like, I do whatever I'm feeling that day. So I like to start with highlight first and then go into contour. And I'm going to kind of walk you through why I do it so. So let's go in with the highlight shade. I'm going to have V. I'm going to have you look towards the mirrors. And we're seeing where the light is naturally hitting V's natural morphology first. And that's exactly where we're going to highlight. You don't need to reinvent the wheel when you're doing someone's makeup or like, first time doing a makeup or even if it's event makeup, anything like that. Work with the natural morphology or the roadmap that's already in front of you because it's going to make your job so much easier when you're thinking about placement. And the end result's going to feel a lot more natural to your client. Because, unless you're working with, a celebrity who's used to wearing makeup all the time, you may be getting booked for someone who's going to like a work dinner. This might be 1 of 3 times in a year that they wear makeup. So if you're going to do like kind of like a cookie cutter or like a copy and paste of where your placement's going, they may not feel like themselves. Objectively, the makeup might look beautiful, but you want to make sure that your client still feels like themselves. So by me doing the highlight and contour where the natural high points of the face are, is going to be very beneficial to your end result and to your client. Okay. Now keep in mind, highlighting, yes, it brings something forward. It also creates space. So like, I know a lot of times you'll see people do like a lot of highlighter over here. These proportions are already pretty perfect. So when we're thinking about—
hear that? She's perfect, babe, okay?
When we're thinking about proportions on the face, when we're going top to bottom, your face is split into 3s. So 1, 2, 3. When we're going from side to side, your face is split into 5s. So space between your eyes, in a perfect world, in an artistic sense, this should be 1 eye width apart. These are that size. If I went ahead and did a highlight right here and created more space, it would have pushed her eyes further apart and it can look a little unnatural.
I just pictured it in my head. I'm sorry.
For me, I have to do it because my eyes are closely together. So now the foundation, the brush that I applied the foundation with, no additional foundation being placed on. I'm now just going to blend out the highlight with that foundation brush. Not only did I now just introduce the foundation into the highlight color to give it a commonality to blend out with the base that's underneath, I'm now veiling over it with a thin layer of that foundation to now make it look like it's coming from within, very similar to what you would see from underpainting.
TikTok things. V is literally perfect.
Thank you, Dave. I live for you.
And Critter from TikTok is one of our pro artists here.
Shout out Carolyn. We love you, baby.
We're a very close-knit group here,
We love our little fam.
right? Now, I started with highlight, and then I'm going into sculpting. The reason I do this is I can see exactly how much of a sculpt I need to do on my client once I start having their features pop out on them naturally on their own. Aside from that, I'm thinking about the blend. If you take a white piece of paper and a black crayon, you see the full saturation of that black. If you take a black piece of paper and a white crayon, it turns gray. Lighter colors have less pigment. Deeper colors have more pigment. You can even think about it on your freelance work. If you do a client who's like really fair, washing your brushes will be a little quicker. If you could do someone who's on the deeper side, it takes a little bit more work to get all that pigment out of the brushes. So now, turn towards the mirrors again. We can see V's natural dip right here from where the hinge of her jaw is. And that's exactly where I'm gonna place this. Actually, no. I'm gonna go in a 158 double-ended brush. And I know some people hate double-ended brushes, but I kind of live for them.
Honestly, I used to be a big hater. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I was a big hater of the double-ended brushes. But recently, especially for like personal usage, I feel like double-ended brushes are like kind of stunning, actually.
So I'm just going ahead and depositing it onto the 158 brush on the slanted sculpting side. Point of intensity is the first place you're going to put down the brush. Always want to be furthest back, because when we're thinking about when a light is hitting from the flash of the camera, if they take it from the side and it's kind of the same saturation all the way through, it's going to look like a stripe. So we have our point of intensity back here, and then start feathering it towards the apple of the cheek. And we don't really want to go past the outer third of the eye. Taking it past that much, it's going to start kind of going into the world of like character makeup. Turn this way for me. Point of intensity furthest back by the hinge of the jaw. Start cascading it towards the side of the mouth. Don't go past the outer third of the eye. All right, turn back towards the mirror. Now with no additional product, I'm just going to start feathering it into the highlight. Because now that this deeper color has been introduced into the skin, if I blend it into the highlight, that's going to create a gradient. If I did the sculpt first and then blended the highlight into the sculpt, it had the potential to turn muddy. Now you see this is a very light sculpt. This is always a great place to start. It might be all the sculpt that your client wants, but it's also just a great way to start the look. And they want it intensified later on, go in with another product to do it. So whenever I'm kind of explaining working in these layers, I like to refer to it in terms of like working out. And shut up.
Tell us about it, babe.
So when you're working a muscle group, you can build your biceps by doing bicep curls, sure. But if that's all you're doing to get your end game, it's not going to be a fully developed kind of like end. So if I'm going with multiple steps to accomplish what I'm going for, that then is going to be a lot more well-rounded, a lot more developed. Now, we're going to do a little bit of sculpting in the other two areas of the face breakdown. So since we introduced this contour color into the center, we still want a little bit of the color existing on the bottom and top half. You don't need to do like a full contour, but you want the color to exist in all three areas when we're thinking about the breakdown of the face.
Uniformity.
Just so if you have one color only in one area, it's going to pop out because it's only going to exist right there. But if I'm having it in all three areas, it's proportionally balanced. So you can see I'm not like really like doing like a harsh contour or harsh sculpt on V. I'm just introducing this color into all three areas for balance. Okay. And then contour, it's really contingent on your client. Maybe they want like their jawline completely eradicated. Go for it, do it.
Destroy it.
Look, I mean, they're paying you. Whatever they want, they get.
That's two. And that's two.
And then whatever's left on the brush, I just run on sides of the nose to connect it to the brows. I will say, last time I did V's makeup, she had no brows. So this is gonna make this a lot easier for me.
That was an era. That was an era of time. I mean, I did live for it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I did live.
Now, before going with powder or anything, close your eyes for me. I'm gonna go into a layer of mist effects. Yes, I'm re-wetting it, but I'm not jumping right into powdering the face anyway. So we're gonna let that air dry because this is now creating one layer of a sealant on the makeup. If you rely on just like one final step to seal everything in, the likelihood of it actually lasting the long wear that they're hoping for is very nil. So I'll do several layers of mist and fix throughout the process. Before powder, again, after powder to melt it in. Now, while I let all of this kind of dry down a little bit more, we're gonna go into brows. And today we're gonna use another unsung hero from Makeup Forever that, again, I think I'm the only person who buys it. Who has ever used or seen our Aqua Resist brow sculptors? So any OG fan members who used to have the Aqua brow, that was also a squeeze tube. You're like, yeah, I remember it. So these are the ones that we launched last year to replace those. The 25 and 40 are the ones I use on 98% of my clients, but I think I bought one about 6 months ago and I'm probably only halfway done. You need the smallest amount. It is a waterproof gel cream that you can just paint on the brow very, very quickly, and it's going to fully lock down. I used to blow through pencils every like 3 weeks, and this is literally the same price as a pencil. This is our Aqua Resist Brow Sculptor. It comes in 5 shades. The 25 and the 40 are definitely going to be your best friends. Those are, the 25 is your like medium neutral, and the 40 is your like deep neutral.
I use the 25 for the entirety of my brow with a little bit of 40, like fluff through it just to give some of the darkness of my mouth with her.
And I'm literally doing the 25 all through your brow, and then the 40 pencil to add depth and dimension.
Okay. We'd love to see it.
Can you tell that I trained them all?
And we live.
So this is something that I feel I'm one of like 3 people who does this, is turn this way for me. Is especially for something like event makeup when there's going to be a lot of blending, a lot of like transitions that we really want to kind of fade out into the skin very seamlessly. If I have a harsh line grounding the brow on the bottom of their brow, it can kind of give the fade out of all my transitions nowhere to go. So for me to have strength in the brow, I actually do the stronger line on top, and then I do all the feathering from the bottom without having to have a line going through. And I'm show you what I mean. So I just went ahead and brushed V's brows down. I'm going with the 274 brush and our Aqua Brow Sculptor in 25. Turn towards the mirrors. Now, because you're using this cream, I don't need to go through like the bells and whistles of like cleaning out the brow. But if you love pencils and that's your jam, I do recommend either cleaning out the brows with isopropyl alcohol before going in with the pencil, or dusting through some setting powder just to remove any moisture underneath. Your pencils won't actually apply quickly if they have nothing dry to cling on to. But because I'm using this, don't have to do that. All right, and just gently feathering it through the front. Don't need to be super precise because V has fullness in her brows at the front half. We're just kind of adding that same fullness towards the bottom half. Okay. Turn towards me. And then I know we've all heard brows are sisters, not twins. I implore you to take the time to get them as close to twins as possible, especially for red carpet makeup, because when we're thinking about the lighting situation, once again, the very center of your face is going to have the most light hit it. So you don't want the brows to kind of fade out into nothingness. Because even if they're doing front shots, or a lot of times you'll get a lot of, it's gonna be hitting the side also. You have to think about the ways that people typically take photos. There's a lot of forethought that goes into like red carpet makeup.
Can we make some noise for the pose? Because that was that was it, babe. That was it. Just look.
I'm literally thinking about, I'm like, all right, like, let's say I was doing like Anya Taylor-Joy. She does a lot of this. So I'm like, oh, I need to like make sure this is good.
It's true. It's true.
I literally study the red carpet makeup.
She's one of your favorites.
I gotta give it up for my Argentine sister. I'm sorry. I'm biased. All right, so super quick and easy. We etched out the brows, and now we're just gonna add a little bit more of depth and dimension with a brow pencil. And for that one, I'm going with our Aqua Resist Brow Definer, the micro tip pencil in number 40. So I'm not going with the same color, I'm going with something slightly deeper.
I really do live for the formula of these. Yeah.
So near the front half, we're just doing little lines through from where the bottom of the natural growth pattern is, feathering it up, turn towards me a little bit, and then adding a little bit more of it at the tail end. And this is going to be like very helpful to create, you know, a full brow, but also a natural looking brow. Because if I just went in with the 40 all the way through, it's going to look very stamped on. Because now we're thinking about how, you know, a natural full brow looks. The color behind it is slightly lighter because it's just a shadow. It's the hair that needs to be darker. So now that I have that slightly lighty color as a base, I kind of outlined everything that's going to register as a brow. Now I can go with that darker color that matches V's hair to start adding in those like more individual strokes or just pockets of depth where I think they're gonna work. Turn towards me. You have a more pronounced arch on this side, so we're gonna mimic it on this side. Ever so slightly.
That's why I used to shave them off. Because the shape is not the same one I mean.
Your brows are never gonna naturally be the same.
It makes me sad.
Now this is gonna be helpful for, again, cameras, because now that I have a color fully blocked behind her brows and the darker color is gonna make those individual hair-like strokes, now when the flash hits her and the hot box is on her, there's not gonna be little pocket gaps where I didn't fill in, because it's fully filled in, it's just not super dark. Turn towards me. Brush through. And then once I brush through, I can see where little gaps will hit. Now, when you have a client in your chair that you're doing makeup for like an event like this, take your phone camera, turn on the light, and just kind of run it across their face and see where flush is kind of poking out when you don't want it to. So like what I'm gonna do is put it over the hair, turn towards me. I can see right here is where the flash would make the skin reach out. Okay, look forward. Now I take a step back because brows. Turn towards the mirror. Turn towards the stairs. All right, I matched the arch. I will typically ask my client which brow they like better, and I'll have the other one try to match as best as I can. If there's a pronounced arch or something like that, you're gonna have to match the arch because it's harder to kind of like take away an arch unless you feel like tweezing their brows, which I have never done and I will never do. Have you closed your eyes for me? Now that we've given the complexion some time to naturally dry down after that layer of mist and fix, now I can go in and powder. So I'm going to do a gentle set all across with one color. So I'm going to go with our HG Skin Setting Powder in the 1.1. This powder does come in 12 colors, 4 color correcting and 8 flesh tones. The 1.1 is the fairest of the flesh tones.
She's pale.
Now, I love this powder. I was a fan of our old one, but I love this powder because it doesn't fully matte the skin to like an uncomfortable position because it is talc free. It's going to absorb all the moisture with cornstarch. And then it also has kaolin clay to diminish any excess shine. But what that cornstarch allows it to do is when we blend it out, it is the lightest powder I have ever used. And I was a big RCMA fan for the longest time.
It's a really stunning powder, especially for brightening.
Yeah, and we're going to be using some color correcting ones as well. So we're going to go in with the 1.1 all over. I like to start from the bottom and make my way up. And this is a powder that you genuinely can't really like overuse. This is a powder that's great for people who are afraid of powders. So think your mature clients that don't want to see a powder anywhere near their face because they're afraid that's going to like accentuate any lines. Because kaolin will help to absorb moisture. Cornstarch will also help to absorb moisture, but it also is almost like a silicone, think like a natural alternative like a silicone, and will smooth out the skin. This formula also makes any cream products or liquid products underneath hydrophobic. So it is going to waterproof your complexion on top of a waterproof foundation we just used. Now, if you have an oily client, I will still do a gentle set first, but then I'll go with the second layer with a powder puff and then really push it into the skin. For my drier girls, don't have to worry about that quite as much. Now for the under eye, I'm not going to use this one. I'm actually going to mix 2 of our color correcting shades. I'm going to be using the Corrective Rose and the Corrective Lavender. And I'm going to mix these 2 to brighten up the under eye without having to use a secondary like liquid highlighter. This is one of those aspects of working in layers that do not always have to be liquid or cream layers. So we know the pink is going to help to brighten as well as the lavender is going to help to neutralize. What I do love about our rose powder is that it's not like bubblegum pink. It's like a peachy pink, so it's actually a lot more versatile for the demographic of client who can use it on. So just a little bit of the corrective rose, a little bit of the corrective lavender.
And I would love to add too that the same way that Antonio had talked about the cream foundations and adding in the color correctors into that to change the tones a bit, it's the same concept with the color correcting powders as well.
Yeah, it also comes in a banana, which you know is great for brightening on your richer client. And we also have a corrective mint, which is great for male grooming. When they don't want a lot of product, you can go in just like a very sheer like tinted moisturizer and the mint green powder, and it neutralizes everything, especially your bald clients. Just brush it across their head. So putting a little bit of powder puff, pushing into the puff, taking a 144, and we're just going to, actually we do 140, look up for me. Just going to press out any lines that may have formed. Now you can see I've given this more than enough time to like air dry down, lines are going to form. The under eye is such a mobile area that every time you look any direction, the skin of your under eye moves. Okay. Yeah.
So I usually do my under eye, and I don't know my first under eye. Because like I try like 10 different concealers right now, and when I apply my concealer, it's like perfect. First. But then when I see the lines, and I try like putting it here, and then taking a little and applying it, it's good, right? But then when I remove the excess, then it starts to like, move or separate with something. So it doesn't look as smooth as before.
When you like powder it down?
No, before I powder, I want to move clean the line. What should I do with that?
Blend from the outer third towards the nose. Because you start, I know we're also used to kind of starting at the center and blending outward. You're now pulling pigment away from where we have the most depth. Start blending it from where we have the least amount of depth and carrying it towards near the side of the nose where we're going to have to cover the most. Blend it that way and then flick it up towards the nose with the brush to kind of remove any excess, because that also might be forming the lines, just too much product. Look towards me. Smooth out the lines.
The only thing you used under the eyes was the color corrector?
And the foundation. Yep, I use the foundation as a concealer because we went in with all these brightening colors that I didn't need the under eye to be super luminous as well. I just wanted to make sure that there was no depth. Okay. And after every powder step, go in with another layer of Mist and Fix. Brush, remove any excess. And note that I didn't set the eyelid because I'm gonna be going with a bunch of like colors and shadows and pencils that I don't want that to be totally dry down, because it can make blending very hard, or any cream products like via pencil are gonna start to like kind of grip. Close for me.
Oh, that's where that fan went. I was wondering where my fan went.
You can have a little like a mobile fan, like the electric ones. You can have a fan, but like this just helps speed things up. It also makes your client feel really like luxe, being fanned.
One thing that I do whenever I use a fan on one of my clients, this is actually the fan that I use for that. I spray one of my favorite perfumes onto it, and I let it stay inside of the fabric so that when I actually fan my client, it's like really gorgeous, like the entire thing about it.
Do that, add a $25 charge onto your service.
Okay. Okay.
We gotta think smarter out here, y'all.
Okay.
And the fragrance does stick to the fan. Like it
Yeah.
smells like it.
All right, now we're gonna move on to eyes. Woo! But if you want to look forward, we can see under eyes look super smooth. I only used the very thin water-based color corrector, the foundation, and a color correcting powder. So now what's mitigating too much product from building up to cause those lines, I've completely erased by really keying down on how many products I'm using. So being very intentional. Yeah.
How are we all feeling? Do we have any questions, any thoughts, any? Or are we just feeling, we're just sitting pretty, we're just having a good time? Yeah.
I need to explore, and most people have already some recent and a lot of materials that I understand in the garden. How do you handle that?
Sure.
It's so hard to like place, okay, you see that it's on the static and the wall is but then it's for, some change the graph, and so I shadow the graph onto the eyelid, and pencil that's hard to
Sit,
Yeah.
that's the big check.
Okay. Antonio, would you like to reply to that?
So I heard part of it. So as a question is how to deal with like someone like a more mature client that might have a little bit more dryness like on the eyes. Your best friend's gonna be creams. Yeah, you don't. I would say either go with either if you want to go with like press shadows, if that's what you're comfortable with. Just be intentional of what you're purchasing. Don't get ones with a ton of talc in it. Get like more like gel powdered ones. Like ours are talc free. Other brands such as like Viziar are going to be like pressed pigments that have a lot more punch with a lot less product. Just to be a little bit more intentional of kind of the ingredients inside of your products. But if you're comfortable, I really prefer, especially for my mature clients, is I build 90% of their eye in like pencils and then throw like a cream shimmer on it. I can't remember the last time I used like a palette on a mature client. It's also really helpful because I'm so used to always doing complexion first that to handle any fallout that might happen, a pencil's not going to have fallout. So it's going to give you a lot more control to kind of map out where you want to put things, and also a lot more pigment impact very quickly. So for your mature clients that have a lot of dryness, I would say using something like cream palettes, you can absolutely do their eyes with that, just to use smaller brushes, or using something like a classic wood pencil. Yeah, of course.
I definitely second what Antonio was saying. I think that if the another like a tool that you can utilize is like primarily creams that are also waterproof simultaneously, working in very small sections and making sure that's fully blended out to the entire capacity that you want it to be. If you're not going to be involving powders, you want to make sure that it's going to have like some sort of longevity in its entirety. Yeah, so I think if the person's skin can be able to handle it, because waterproof products can also sometimes be a little bit drying depending on the eye.
They create a resin, so it really depends on how your client can handle that. As a reoccurring client, you'll know that after like one application, how they can handle waterproof products. If it's maybe your first time doing their makeup, ask them, what do you currently use? What do you not like using? I've literally looked up ingredients in some products. They're like, oh, I hate using pencils for like tight lining. I'm like, great, which ones have you used? And it's usually like carbon black that they're not used to. So I'm like, great, let me use something else. I'm gonna have you look straight. I'm gonna go with our Anywhere Limitless Brown Artist Color Pencil. I can't remember the last time I did someone's makeup and didn't use this pencil. So these Artist Color Pencils are basically what keeps the lights on at Makeup Forever. This comes in 14 shades. Everyone knows like the Wherever Walnut, Anywhere Caffeine. Everyone knows there. I think Limitless Brown needs a little bit more height.
I would have to agree with that.
So these are high impact, so much pigment. They're a long wear formula, but they're not waterproof. So it gives you the ability to really use it anywhere you need to and whatever capacity you need to use it. So these can be used on eyes, lips, face. We do have our Artist Color Pencil Extremes that are going to be lip specific. So we do have waterproof versions of some of your fan favorites, like the Anywhere Caffeine, Limitless Brown, Dimensional Dark, like the bangers. And you'll get a lot more longevity from those, but they don't allow you to use it multi-purpose. Keep looking straight. So I'll sketch out everything with my client's eyes looking straight in a relaxed position. Do not be afraid to tell your client, like, don't help me, just look straight, comfortable. Because oftentimes they'll be like, let me like do this for you. Or a lot with lips, they'll be like, let me relax. Because people are gonna be looking at you or the work when they're in a relaxed position, 98% of the time. And then we're gonna gently add a little bit more in the outer third and just start to pull it out. Because I'm gonna be lifting V's eye a little bit, I don't want just liner to do it or just like a deep shadow. Kind of same thing I was saying about, you can build your contour, but in several layers. I'm gonna have several different colors pulling out for this lift. So I'm not hoping for one product to do all the heavy lifting for me. And then whatever's left on the brush, I'll just kind of pull through V's natural orbital bone and bring it towards the nose. Now the eyes, we're not seeing a ton of eyeshadow on the red carpet, but we are, of course, needing to make sure that whatever we're structuring, whatever we're applying, it's gonna hold up to all those cameras. I saw a lot in like the Grammys recently. It was a lot of like really thick liner that like once they opened their eyes, you saw nothing else. I'm like, I didn't do their makeup. Turn towards me. Look straight, relaxed. You see just how creamy these go on? Oh, God. So easy.
Oh my God.
This is like my favorite color, honestly. Limitless brown. It's like the perfect, like neutral, slightly reddish chocolatey brown. And then you can layer these. You can build up the intensity and have it be like very opaque. Or you can do what I'm doing, kind of like shearing it out. But I already perfected the shape I wanted. So it takes out a lot of the extra work for me. And similarly, the other side, I'm just taking whatever's left on the brush and pulling it up. Now, it's completely contingent on the eye shape of your client. V has deep set eyes, but not like a wildly pronounced brow bone. So what I can do if I'm trying to kind of make everything a little bit more harmonious and a little bit more on the same like playing field is just whatever's left right across the brow bone. Just do a smallest bit to almost like a contour, just to start knocking it back a little bit. Okay, look straight at me. Turn this way. I'll do a little more on this side. Now, another really great reason to do pencils to like build out, especially your transitions, is if you do your complexion first. And I know if people like to do their complexion first, but then they leave powder to like bake on the under eye, I do not enjoy the way that makes my client's skin look, I think, ever. Like, I'm not a fan of baking. I will say, at least with this powder, you can if that's your gig. I think I made the choice 8 years ago. I don't like baking powders unless I'm doing like theater makeup for somebody. Yeah, once I stopped doing drag, I stopped baking with my powders. You can see I've had no problem going on with the cream to clean up that line, even though I powdered everything already. These powders do not grip. All right, let's go with a slightly deep transition. I'm going to go in with our dimensional dark brown.
I do love the dimension.
So same way limitless brown you can use on literally everybody, but for your deeper clients, this is like the perfect like kind of like nude lip color. This is really great for your clients when you want to do kind of like a smoky like liner that's not so black, but it is a deep neutral brown. This one we're just going to apply, same area, a little bit more localized, keeping it on the outer third, bring it up from the lash line to the start of the orbital bone pocket. Turn towards me. Look straight. Honestly, this is a really good trick too. Just have them follow your finger for whatever way you need their lid to move.
I thought we were playing a game for a minute.
Yeah, I was like. So I'm going with a 248, another double-ended brush, but this one's gonna be for the eyes. And I'm just gonna go with the fluffier side and just start dabbing this out. Because I've already made the structure I needed with the limitless brown, so this is really just to add that intensity on the outer third. And then kind of blending it into like that outer third in like a V to do a slight lift for the eye. Now this is a great starting point, but like if your client's going for like that super intense like social media like kind of like depth, I always recommend kind of still starting with pencils and then building up with like shadows if you need to really add like a punch. But you'll just get so much more structure and ease without having to do a lot of cleanup with a pencil application for these beginning steps.
I think when you think about longevity as well, going in with like these sorts of layers of pigment and color on top of themselves in different forms. So you have the creams first, going with the powders afterward. It's just another layer for as like you exist throughout the day, your eyes blink, powder comes off of your face, the cream begins to dissipate, the natural elements are working against you. And it is what it is, right? To make sure that something really is going to have its highest amount of longevity is going in with a color first that is cream, and then a adjacent, the following color in the same tone and shade in a pigment format, powder format.
Yeah, so just going with our Artist Go palette, I'm going to go with Anywhere Caffeine and just take this deep brown that's basically the same color as Lips Brown, and we're just going to add a little bit more depth and intensity. So I'll take the 248 and then I'll push it into my bristles so that there's not a ton of pigment just resting on the very tips. I'm really just pushing it into the actual like body so that as I'm working, there's pigment being deposited the entire way, not just where I put down the brush first. Now, not only is this adding another layer of pigment, I'm now setting all those pencils essentially. Now, a good thing to keep in your kit is actually like a micro finishing powder. A lot of like looks like this, a lot of browns, a lot of like varying colors. Sometimes your skin can only hold on to so much that maybe the blend starts getting a little choppy. If you have a finishing powder, as we already know, finishing powders are really meant to reflect light. If you just brush over all of your transitions with just a fluffy brush and a transition and a finishing powder, it's gonna help to smooth out because it's now kind of reflecting light off of any like harsh lines of demarcation. Right, and totally clean brush at 242, just going ahead and marrying everything together with no additional pigment being loaded in.
Would I have tissue?
Yes. Woo.
Thank you.
Now we're going to revisit that airbrush thinner. So we have a product called our Aqua Resist Smoky Shadow Sticks. And they come in like 16 colors. I love them, especially for bridal. But I love these colors because they're a waterproof cream. They're super opaque. They work great as a base if I wanted to do something really intense on top of it. Now, for stick formulas like this, I don't like spraying the component straight with alcohol because waterproof products create a resin. If I'm not introducing a volatile substance like isopropyl alcohol, it can start seeping in and drying out my product early. So I just take a product that I've never like touched to a hand, scoop some off, and I can go straight with this, or I can thin it out to make it a little bit more fluid. So I take one little drop of our instant brush cleaner or isopdodecaine, mix it in, and I'm now just making a cream eyeshadow, which is going to make my job so much easier.
What was the product? Brush cleaner?
Yep, our brush cleaner is the same thing as airbrush thinner. So I'm going to go in with that same 248, but I'm going to take the flat packing brush side now. And this is shade number 12, Sunrise. And oh no, I think I'm using quartz actually. I'm using shade number 15, Quartz, in the Aqua Resist Smoky Shadow Stick. Look straight. Now I know this is a question in V's class about V sometimes tugging on the lid. That's why I always liquefy it and just turn it into a paint as opposed to having to put this straight onto my client's lid and then having to spray it down with alcohol, which can just make it dry out prematurely. Super quick, super easy. And then we're going to use this as a base. If your client's more of that light makeup than makeup girly, sure, but we're gonna go in a little bit more today.
She likes her makeup. She likes a full beat.
You can just see how easily this is running across the lid now. Now imagine this for like your bridal client, for any of you that do bridal work. This is gonna make your job so much faster. Super quick, super easy. But we're gonna go play with one of V's favorite products, our Starlit Diamonds.
Shout out to these bad boys. Nobody talks about them except for like us.
So our Starlit Diamonds comes in 8 colors. What they are a low pigment base with a duochrome factor. So I'm using 102, which no, actually 101. So this is an opal base with a silver glitter. We have 102 opal base with like a yellow glitter. I think I'm going with the yellow one actually.
Ah.
And not to be confused with, we have another product in the same exact jar called Starlit Powder, which is a high pigment, loose pigment. Just high opacity, loose pigment. Back in with 248. I'm just going to go with fluffy brush. Push it into my hand so there's not a ton of fallout. What's great about these is these don't need like any type of adhesive base to actually stick onto the skin. And you can layer these separately. Like if you were going for something, let's say your client is one of these like TikTok, Gen, whatever we're at right now, and they want like 6 colors on their lid, you can literally do one single base and take like the first 4 of these and do like a dot of the blue, a dot of the purple, a dot of the green, a dot of the yellow, and just have like an oil slick color. We're not doing all that today. But now look straight. You can see it from one side to the next. A lot of pigment, one product, super easy. I say the 101 is the most universal because it's the opal base with just like a silver glitter. But because we had a little bit more warmth around going in with the like Limitless Brown, I wanted to be a little bit of warmth factor to this.
You said this was 102?
One go. Opal base with the yellow glitter.
If you guys are familiar with like the Douyin style of makeup that you find a lot on TikTok or on Instagram, if you're interested in that type of cosmetic application, this type of glitter, this microfine glitter pigment is really phenomenal to use for. So, ding, 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 you know, like glitter and hope inside of something.
Now, typically, when I did this class last year, we didn't see a lot of wing liner on the red carpet. This year we are. Yeah. So same thing, I'm gonna use an aqua resist color pencil and just squeeze some out onto my palette. Now this I'm gonna use just before it dries down, and then if it starts to dry out, you can put some brush cleaner and reactivate it. Then we go in with our 258. This is just a cone-shaped eyeliner brush. Let her up. Now, depending on the timing I have with my client, I will sometimes do like a pencil, like an artist color pencil first to like kind of map out my shape, and then go with something a little bit more like waterproof. But look straight. I will say because I have done V's makeup several times, I can just kind of go in because I'm familiar with like what kind of line is going to work on her. And this is honestly why it's so great to have repeat clients. It makes your job easier. Now, who here has ever had issues with, doing liner on somebody with either close or like deep set eyes or like a monolid? So I will say I've had a lot of practice on this because I have deep set eyes myself. But something that works really well is I know we all, especially early in our careers, are kind of trained with the go towards the tail end of the brow and then arch it up from the bottom lash line. On deep set, somebody who has a pronounced brow bone, that doesn't work. If they really, really want that shape, you have to do like a bat hook liner. But for just more of a classic liner, what's gonna work is actually pulling a little bit straighter out as opposed to out towards the tail end of the brow. I'm gonna show you what I mean. Now look down and towards me. And liner, it really depends on you as an artist and your hand. Look straight down towards me. You know what works for you and what doesn't. I know for myself, I cannot do liner with an actual like pen component. I drink too much coffee, my hands are not steady whatsoever. So I can only do it with the gel and pen and a brush. So I use something super fine and flat like this. So I can kind of, once I deposit the color, I get it super thin. I do one line out and then I just connect down to the lash line. Some people like kind of your more like needle, like kind of like tip, like classic, like paintbrush. That works really well for some people. Some people could take a pen liner and knock it out. I'm not that girl. Look down. Now, if you're somebody who has enough mobile lid space that if I wanted to do like a full, like really thick wing on her, it can hold. But just for the sake of when we're talking about red carpet, look straight. Now, what I'm going to do is actually take some brush cleaner on the tip of my brush. Now we just got like the thinnest little wing. So maybe turn towards the mirror. Now you can see, I didn't go towards here. I went straighter out because if I had gotten towards the tail end, her brow bone would have made it curve and kind of fold in as her eyes were open versus when closed. So by going straight out for someone who has a deep set eye or like a heavily pronounced brow bone, it's going to just work better for you to just go a little bit out. You may want to control the length of the wing you're going for, but this is going to just be a little bit easier for your hand. If your client is hell-bent on having it go like very like upwards, what you would do is connect it here to right where the fold is starting in the orbital bone. And then instead of connecting it straight, you're actually going to drop it straight down to the lash line. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to do that type of hook liner, which I think is typically what you do for yourself.
Not as much anymore. When I do like a really graphic liner, yes.
Yeah.
But nowadays I do a lot more like a buff smoked liner.
Okay. So keep them straight. Okay, let me remove this wing so I can show them the other liner I'm talking about. Because I know this is a common question when it comes to deep set eyes. I remember back in my Sephora days, like 2017, I was always the model to show this trick because my eyes are so deep set. All right, now look straight. Now, if they are very, very passionate about having that liner go really high up, right, look down for me. All right, now look down. You can see how, turn this way. You can see how it's not going straight from here. So right at the outer third where her brow bone and her lash line are connecting, I just dropped it straight down as opposed to going across, because then it would close up all the mobile lid space on that outer third and made the eyes look very beady. So this is how you can do like a graphic liner on a deep set eye. Do you have any tips and tricks to share with the class on that front? Because you love your graphic liner.
I do. Don't be afraid of you're on you, and it will mess up. So move with confidence. I think that one thing that I can also say to you is that it's really important to move away from the body. Like when you think about like the natural flex of your hand, right? Like the way that the actual wrist moves. It's not as like, I mean, if you want to do it right now, it's like flicking your wrist, like trying to go inward versus going outward. It feels a lot less intuitive going inward. So from starting it out and then allowing your hand to just move with the product. You don't have to spend too much time on it. Sometimes you just gotta lay a line down and then adjust to that forward. It's okay. The less scary that you feel like it is, the less scary it's gonna be.
Yeah, for any of like artists who are like, you know, a little bit newer to the game, who are still maybe struggling with liquid liner or just like wing liner in general, I'll say that I sucked at it for the first like 2 years I was doing makeup. It wasn't until I had like a training that she's like, just slap it on, fix it after. And once I threw it on, she's like, yeah, you have like one little thing to fix. I'm like, oh, I like psyched myself. Because when you think about it, you're like,
Yeah. Like the sketchy line syndrome.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, the slide will be so much faster. Also, that first side will take you 5 minutes, and the second side will take you 30 seconds. It's true. Y'all know it's true.
It's true.
Because I literally just did that, and it's already like done. Look down for me. Are you showing me? Making this one a little more graphic. There we go.
I feel like the other thing about graphic liner that I would love folks to kind of think about as well is that like revision is just your best friend. Get the really tiny Q-tips. Get a makeup remover that you really, really enjoy. It doesn't matter if the base comes off a little bit. You can just go back in with a hydrating primer, some foundation or concealer, and make it as sharp and as clean as you want it to. Like it's okay to remove things if it's not exactly what it is that you're looking for. Don't feel like too married to the base and complexion that you've created.
Yeah, I would look up for me. I would say half the job of being like a professional makeup artist is being able to troubleshoot and pivot without your shit.
Mm-hmm. Heavy on that. Heavy
Like if you could just walk into a
that.
job and be like, 8 things did not go right, and then you could just correct it without like the client sensing your fear,
Mhm.
you're a pro, girl.
Mhm.
Now I'm just taking a little bit of Limitless Brown and smudging it across the lower lash line. Because we have so much depth from the liner, I don't want to have the under eye be too dark because then it's going to, again, the darker your colors, the more they're going to kind of like take over the show. We don't want it to be too much. Look straight at me. Turn this way. Straight at me.
No, I always forget how glam it feels getting your makeup done. Because I never get my makeup done by nobody. I always be doing it. So right now, baby, ooh, I got the glam.
So you want the best brush to like clean up a liner. It's actually a calligraphy brush that I always use. It's like a blunt chop, and you just put some like brush cleaner, micellar water, dip it in, drag it across, gives you the perfect line. I also use this for lipstick, which I'll be doing later. All right, now speaking of lips, your lips need to be the strongest part of the makeup. That does not mean it needs to be the loudest part of your makeup. It doesn't need to be a red. It doesn't need to be a fuchsia. It could be nude colors, but it needs to be strong. Now, for longevity purposes, because realistically, we're not gifting our client the lipstick we use. We have mixed 6 colors for them. So what I like to do is whatever my end result is going to be for the lip color, I'm going to go in with a waterproof lip liner and fill in the entire lip first so that there's a color backdrop to happen if the center of the lips goes away from eating, drinking, making kissy faces, whatever it is. So we have artist color pencils, but we also have artist color pencil extreme. So these came out like 4 months ago. Yeah. And these are going to be the lip only waterproof formula, but they are so creamy. So I'm going to go in with Wherever Walnut and fill in the entire lip.
Do you find these dry the lips out?
No, because they go down so creamy, but they don't have like, they don't create like a, what's the word? The waterproofing agent isn't like a resin that's going to like evaporate all the moisture out of the lip. They just lock down.
I think when you have the chance to like swatch it onto your pan and let it sit for a minute, you'll see exactly what Antonio means in relation to the finish and how it sits.
So I know how my hands work. So I will always start in the center. And then connect from the corners towards the center. And then I'm going to take a bullet eyeshadow brush, and we're just going to ensure that the lines are crisp, diffused, there's no gaps. And then we're going to go in and fill in the rest of the lip, but I want to get the lip liner out of the way and perfect it first with a brush. Because if I gave this too much time to dry down and fill in the entire lip and then try to clean up the edges, I would have to clean it up with a remover as opposed to just being able to clean it up with a brush and blending and buffing out. Now, the reason why I said I know how my hand works and the reasons why I start in the center is I know that I hold a pencil on the side. If you can go straight in, if it works for you better, you can kind of, but because I paint in the center, because I hold it to the side, the thing is, if I went from the center towards the out corners of the mouth, you put your finger right here, you'll feel the center pulling down and it creates a straight line, which is going to reduce volume of the lips. But the way that yours work, there's more mobility going outward towards the back end of your forearm. So I'm going towards the outside, towards it gives me more curvature. So that's how it works for my hand.
That was a way more articulate way of explaining what I tried to before. So thank you. That's okay. I think you actually told me that.
I did teach you that.
Okay. And that's on education.
Yeah, if I'm not sitting at my laptop answering emails, I'm teaching something to my team. All right, and now we just go ahead and fill in the lip. That's probably why my back always hurts too. Okay. And just run across. Now for red carpet, yes, it needs to be strong. But if they're not doing close-up shots, I say this kind of depends on your client because some clients' lips, you'll see they almost have like a double lip line where you'll see one lip line is like the fleshy pink and then they'll have one that almost looks white. So it really depends on your client. So like if you know there's gonna be close-ups on that person, like they're nominated for something, then maybe go towards that outside lip line, the more one that kind of appears more white. Because once the camera hits them, people go like, oh, did you clean up with foundation or concealer? It looks off because you see a white line around their entire lip. If it's kind of, a satellite character that's going to be at it, stay with the fleshy part. Now that we've gone in with the Weber Walnut and the waterproof formula, now I'm going to go in with our Rouge Artist Velvet Nudes. And this is going to be in shade 105. So the Velvet Nudes I really love because it's a dimethicone-based lipstick. So they actually smooth out the lips because they're going to, again, it's a silicone. It's meant to rest on top of the skin and smooth out. Going with that same bullet brush. And I'm loading it with enough so that I don't have to double dip. So you see, this is has a very, very common tonality to the Weber Walnut. And then we're gonna add a little bit of a dimension. So I'm actually gonna go in with our number 100 in the Forever lipstick. So this one is a matte formula, so that's why I definitely want to apply this with a brush. Because we have a lot of waterproof or like long wear agents on the lips that I don't want this to be like kind of cling down too hard. Okay, and you can look forward. You can see there's just a little bit of lightness that we added in now. I like to play with like ombre lips or dimension in the lips so I don't have to overline my client. It's kind of the pretense of overlining lips. It gets a little crazy sometimes. Oftentimes like they may not have enough space in between their nose and their lips to actually like properly overline. So I really got to play with dimension and like colors to just kind of have that dimension live there without having to overline lips. But what is event makeup without gloss? So I'm gonna go with our Super Boost gloss. These just came out like 2 weeks ago. And I don't carry gloss in my kit, and now I do. All I had was a clear gloss. I made my own gloss out of all my colors. But when this launched, I was like, oh. V, what have you been wearing as your go-to?
Oh god, I've been wearing like 3 of them. I don't remember the names of them just yet, but it's the yellow one that has the purple shift.
Fairy Glimmer.
What is it?
Fairy Glimmer.
Okay, Fairy Glimmer. I think it's Red Walnut. I think.
Probably.
Or is it anywhere caffeine?
I gave you rubber walnut.
Then it's that one. Thank you. Yeah, they're just so stunning.
So these are actually like a trio oil complex lip gloss, but they're not going to break down the lipstick underneath because they're sustained, or suspended rather. And then they don't have like that stringy, gooey, like goopiness that you sometimes get from a gloss. These honestly have been a game changer for me because I've spent the last 6 years with not a single gloss other than a clear gloss in my kit, and now I have all the like the nude colors.
They're really gorgeous.
And they have a little bit of menthol lactate, which is going to have a cooling sensation on the lips to plump, but not plump with an irritant like capsaicin.
For red carpet, would you recommend right?
Waterproof.
People be crying.
So the wonderful thing about these classes is that there's usually a makeup artist in our chair. I'm not doing the mascara there.
Period. But I think that's actually a really good point, though, is that if you have a client in your seat who has like a lot of issues with things like super close to their eye, if they feel comfortable, like say like tight lining on like their mobile lid or onto their lower lash line, it's okay to just have them do that. Give them the product in the moment, disinfect it, make sure it's good to go. Have them do it themselves. If it's going to make the end product look better, it's okay.
They will typically be more comfortable getting closer to their eye than we can ever get. What I will always do for them, though, is I will take a mascara one, dip it into the waterproof product, and then take a clean one and then rub it against that way. Because the one you actually dip into the like mascara component has way too much product on it. And if we trust them, they're going to get it everywhere. So then the one that you wipe it off onto is the one that you give them.
Thank you so much. Ew. Oh, gorge.
And I usually don't do wing liner on you because I usually do like 18 colors on you. I'm like, not doing a wing.
Could I have one more one with mascara on it, please? Oh, gorgeous. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and then last but not least is gonna be finishing touches, which includes blush. But blush is like the last step I do. What I'm actually gonna do is looking at it now with a light directly on V, the contour needs to be bumped up. So we're gonna go in with our Artist Face powder in 410, and we're gonna go ahead and add some intensity to the sculpt. So I honestly love these powders because I do love something that's talc free because I always find talc kind of cements things and gets very crumbly very quickly on a lot of cream products. But they're a gel powder, so these carry so much pigment so quickly that honestly, if I can do less work or dip back in less times, I'm a happy girl. So I'm just kind of going in with my 156 brush and going over exactly where I did that initial cream contour, and we're just adding another layer of intensity. Same thing, we had introduced the contour color to all three areas of the face horizontally. So we're just gonna go ahead and do the same over here. Whenever you're doing anything like bronzer or contour, anything like on the forehead, make sure you're feeding it into the hairline near like the baby hairs, because you don't want the flash to hit and then you see like bare scalp. So I'll literally like lift their hair and just push product into their hair. I will say if your client is blonde, you may want to like be careful of that. Because I have fully had that happen at, what was I doing? I think I was doing wedding.
That's rough.
Yeah.
It happens.
And then same thing, we're just gonna kind of touch this underneath the jawline. And then just be careful of the areas that you're depositing the color, because if I, burned out the temples over here, it would have made the face way too light in the center and kind of crushed everything. So I'm leaving this space between this contour and the depth we added near the hairline, keeping this open. Do a little bit, pinch the brush, run it across the nose into the brows, because that's exactly what we did with the powder to kind of connect everything in the center. And then we're going to, because we did so much lifting, we're going to kind of keep that motif going with the blush placement. So I'm going to kind of take the 230 and the 210, so wherever it rose, that's fine.
See you.
I'm depositing this very high up on the cheekbone, and then I'm taking the lighter color, and that's what I'm going to be bringing a little bit more to like the apples of the cheek. So blush placement can structure the face just as much as contour and highlight can. So something like this where I'm bringing it kind of into the temples, top of the cheekbones, and very, very little localized on the apples of the cheek is going to pull the face up. If your client a little bit more mature, you may want to focus it a little bit more on the apples of the cheek because A, that is what they're used to. But what it's also going to do is, because we're adding all the color right here, it's actually going to add volume into the face, which we know for more mature clients, sometimes there can be a little bit of hollowness going on. So blush can do a lot for the proportions of the face. Never think that it only rests on highlight and contour.
It's true.
So now that I went ahead and did the 230 for this back, the 210 on the cheeks, going to take off the excess from the brush, this way, and then in like a figure 8 motion, marry everything together, blending it into the contour, into the highlight. We don't want Neapolitan ice cream where it's like stripe, stripe, stripe. We want everything to have a nice seamless blend. And then same as with the contour, just a little bit more blush. Very gently cascade it into the center of the face. And that's because we're just kind of taking into account how your skin naturally flushes. If you're like at the gym or you get scared, whatever, when you get a natural flush to your skin, it doesn't just happen on your cheeks. It actually hits the center of your face more than anything and the rosiness of the apples of the cheek. So adding just a little bit there. And then this is where I will do a double set. I'll take Mist and Fix, the hydrating formula, close your eyes, across the perimeters. And then Mist and Fix Matte. It has silica powder, so you want to make sure you shake it up for like 10 seconds. And I spray it on a powder puff.
Why do you spray it on a powder puff?
Because what this is going to do is it's going to help it stay exactly where I need the mattification to happen. And it's actually going to do the same thing as like when you press in powder as opposed to just using a brush. It's going to push it into it and create a real set.
That does not lift up the product when we apply.
Now, our velvet sponges do not lift nothing. Like we use these for like foundation application. These are the best material, honestly. But you can even see with the light hitting, it's not refracting so heavy as over here as it is over here. Now, we're keeping the center with light still, but no unwanted shine. Fix your hair.
Oh, my bangs. My bangs are in hell.
That's fine.
No, whatever.
And we're ready for the red carpet.
Wow. I love it. Thank you.
All right. So I know we talked a lot about mixing colors together, light layers, a lot about lighting, but honestly, when you're taking these types of clients, lighting is what you really want to consider. So asking the questions, where they're going, kind of what time it's at, making sure that we have all this information of where our work's going to live when they're at their actual event, not how it's going to look when they're in our chair. Any last minute questions? What's up?
Do you have any tips on hooded eyes or like monolids and stuff? Because it's hard to see like eyeshadow when you're trying to hooded.
So I'd say a common mistake I see for someone who has the artists who are working with someone with monolid is that they try to draw above the whole thing the entire time. You actually want to keep most of your depth directly at the lash line to keep the shape of their eye as kind of the focal point of the eye look, and then really adding dimension really just in the outer third, going a little bit up, but not kind of like encasing their entire eye. So really get really deep into their lash line, do tight lining. If you want to do like a smoky eye, like really saturate that lash line, and then gently feather everything around it, but don't cascade over the entire thing. It makes their eyes look small, and they're already struggling with that issue when they have the extra fatty tissue in that area. What's that?
Do you have any tips for a person who needs to use their glasses and don't want to put makeup with it?
I would say best thing I can say is just you can either use like the Mist and Fix matte and spray it on the whatever these things are called. I don't remember. Yeah, the rubber pads, or a setting powder. Put it there also. But what I did with the velvet sponge and this, I pressed it into the nose, which is going to help to kind of mitigate any lifting happening also because of the silica powder. It's going to have the rubber kind of slip across it.
I will say though, especially in relation to glasses specifically, I think that it's really important to keep your own expectations to a certain degree, because I think that when we consider something being impact proof versus impact resistant, right now my rubber pads of my glasses are pressed up flush against my skin. Any condensation, any heat, any oil like production, any sebum, anything is going to go directly to the rubber pad because it's right there. It's not going to breathe through the skin, breathe through the cosmetic. It's going to go right there, which will almost like not immediately, but I would probably say within like 2 hours, it's going to begin to adjust it a little bit. It's just something that you have to just keep aware of.
Yeah, for general cosmetics, you can set them 16 ways to Sunday, but if you take your nails and scratch across it, you're going to lift product. The only makeup that's approved for the human skin that you can use that's going to be actually impact proof is alcohol activated, which I do not always recommend around like the nose area.
Yeah, no, definitely. And even then, it's still a pigment that you can like carve out if you try hard enough.
Yeah.
If you try hard enough, we don't want to be crazy.
Any other questions?
You said you wouldn't recommend alcohol makeup. Where?
Like alcohol activated paints, I don't recommend for like all over like application because like alcohol is very volatile, so it's going to pull out any drip of moisture you have in your skin. All right, well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
We have the whole team downstairs to help you all out. We have 40% off all makeup forever, and there's even 2 preset kits that are 50% off that are right when you walk downstairs to the left. What's up?
Ask for your Instagram.
Yeah.